Hello, hello. Welcome back to Living Luna. And today we are here with another exciting special guest, Deb Porter. So we're going to bring her on in just a moment, but she's on a mission to Mr. Rogers the world, which I think is just like the sweetest mission statement about by teaching and listening through confidential and compassionate practices. And so she's founder of Hearing Out Life Drama, aka Hold, which I love acronyms. So points for acronyms. Yep. And yeah, like let's go ahead and bring her on and she can tell us all about it. Boop. So welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be with you today.
Yeah. So I am trying to remember how we even originally first met. I believe it was through a guy who knows a guy, Michael Whitehouse.
Michael Whitehouse, correct. Yes.
And I have been trading emails with Deb for a while now.
Yes.
You're the social butterfly that trades.
We're like
emails.
pen pals, but we only, and it's literally pen pals because we like respond every couple of weeks and just kind of like check in with each other. And
that sounds like you.
Yeah, we support each other's mission. So Deb, if you don't mind telling us a little bit more about your mission and like how you kind of got inspired to start Hold.
Yeah. Hold came about because the job I was in actually cut my salary, and I started to think about, wow, if I could do anything, what would I really want to do? And what I love to do most is listen. And my background and training originally was as a United Methodist pastor. And I left the church pretty early on in my early 20s. Well, actually, it was my late 20s when I left. But Hold was really inspired because I was thinking about, okay, what do I want to do? And what I loved in ministry was listening. So it's so important, I think, to really be heard. Everybody needs to be heard, and it's a concrete human need. And I especially found that I needed that when I was a caregiver to my ex-husband for 8 years. And so that was really what inspired me to I think go down that path, was just knowing how much it can mean to somebody when they're really heard, when somebody just listens without advice and without judgment, when somebody's just present. It's so powerful. So.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let's look at that background.
Well, okay. So I have grown up in the United Methodist Church. So that's been my background forever. I have worked through many different types of spiritual backgrounds, but like when I was a kid, and went to a United Methodist affiliated university, and in my undergrad, and since I knew all of the rituals, I looked for jobs in the United Methodist Church. So I still work part-time as the technical director for a United Methodist Church. And it's just been really, it is interesting to listen to. I also am friends with several United Methodist pastors. And it's just interesting to hear how they kind of have similar feelings about like the thing that they like about ministry the most is the listening aspect. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who don't want to like, the church is all about being inclusive, hopefully. But it's it's one of those things where it's like I'm recognizing more and more that there are people in the church that are not really wanting to be as like our as our cat cries downstairs.
She's just forgotten we existed
again. But the whole church thing is that, like, basically what I'm trying to say is people are hurting in many different ways. And I've noticed that the people who there are different groups of people who feel unheard for different reasons, and then there will be like a clash in like the church politics or something. And
Yes.
I remember going to annual conference one year and I was like, I am never going again, because like the politics and the finances and like, what is church really about? I'm like, oh no.
And I imagine what was your experience with that, Deb, in terms of you have this desire to listen really non-judgmentally and to make space for everyone.
Yes.
Did that factor into your decision to go into hold and to like move away from that prior path?
It did actually. I left church ministry in large part because of the clash with authenticity. Of course, this was 20 years ago, right? Because I'm 50 now, so we're talking a long time ago. So there's been a minute. But at the time I left, the church was really being torn apart. I was in the Northern Illinois Conference at the time, and people were fighting. It was ridiculous. I was like, this is not how we are compassionate, caring people, and this is not how we hear each other. And what really led to my decision, besides having my daughter, was this. I had my nephew came out to me actually, and there was a gentleman, he's now passed on, his name was Reverend Greg Dell. He lost everything because he performed a marriage for an LGBTQ plus couple. And I knew that if my nephew ever asked me, I would say yes. And at that point, I would risk everything that I would build. And so at that point, I decided it wasn't for me. I wanted to live authentically, which meant that I got to be welcoming and loving to anyone, regardless of what the church said, whatever the politics were. So, yeah, that was really important to me. I think that, politics are one thing, but a whole other thing. And I think the world would be a lot better if we learned how to bring love into politics.
Yeah.
I really do. So,
I mean, that is my politics pretty much at this point. We talk a lot in our little sessions, just the two of us, about how everyone's voice deserves to be heard no matter what side they're on. And when we start to dig in, we realize how everything is just coming from pain and fear.
Yes.
Everything is just pain and fear. And I'm sure that in hold, like that's what you hear is people that are like, I'm just in pain and I need somebody to listen to me.
Yes. Sometimes people start from that place of pain where they're crying. I mean, and when somebody starts from crying, we're not able to get them maybe as far as we'd like, because you can't shift that quickly. You don't go from crying to, oh, I feel like I'm on Mount Everest and I feel great. but nevertheless, they're able to come away with emotional regulation and with the feeling of, okay, I know what's next, a more feeling of calm and knowing they're heard. And I think that brings a lot of value to people. In 15 minutes, you can do a lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, the thing is that you give them a space to cry, because there's so many places in the world that have taught us that there is not a space for crying. I mean, we see it in media all the time. Like people are like, oh, I'm such a crybaby. And they'll like immediately be like,
every time we're watching any competition show and somebody gets emotional, they're like, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I get so worked up.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't apologize. Don't apologize for crying. And, because we're all like a lot of us have been raised with from generations of people who haven't been taught or been cared for or listened to in those ways. And it's just, heartbreaking to see that generational trauma just passed down regarding that stuff. And I just think it's so interesting that you were saying like 20 years ago, this sort of stuff was happening. But I remember when I was at the undergrad level a couple of years ago, there were people who, like, this was right around the time that they legalized gay marriage in all 50 states. And as soon as that happened, a local United Methodist pastor married a lesbian couple who worked at the school and immediately got, put on like probation. And he spent like the entire time on probation writing articles about how it's wrong that the United Methodist Church is doing this. But it's just like the fact that, stuff hasn't
still
changed.
happening.
It's still happening.
It's still happening, and it's so, so sad. And the fact is, the reason that happened to him was because he church polity is church polity. The United Methodist discipline is the United Methodist discipline, and until that changes, which is can only happen through General Conference, which is above Annual Conference, until
Yep.
that happens, people will continue to fight and go on probation and lose things. And maybe I part of me, I feel so much when you say that. I feel so sad because there's another person who was simply responding in love, and I just it's so not good. And in terms of crying, I wanted to say something about that too. I am 50, and so back in my generation, it was quite common. What I heard growing up was, "If you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about." That was the phrase. And so I spent a lot of years working to learn how to cry again. Learning, creating that it is safe for me to do that. It's safe. And so I think that's part of the reason why I'm so good at holding space with people when they do, because I've done the work to know that people might be starting from that place of not feeling safe, to be able to offer that to them so that they can stay in that place and move through whatever it is that they're moving through.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is to just be able to offer that space to someone, if you have ever experienced not having that space, is magic, because you're doing healing work in that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, what has this experience been like for you? Have you had any moments where doing this work has like just opened you up or really expanded your view of the world in some way?
I love listening. It's the best thing, and I really love teaching my listeners. And I think that's teaching my listeners, I think, is really where I'm finding the expansion, because they ask questions and they're like, well, what if this happens, and what about this? And so that's where I really get expanded, because it's their experience that draws from me mine. In the midst of an actual appointment with somebody, I'm really confident about that. I've been doing that for a long time, and I always just walk away from those experiences feeling like, yes, I helped somebody. That's what I was put here to do. I was put here to help people. And so that always feels awesome. But where I find that I really grow is teaching people.
So I'm really curious what you teach about listening. Like, if you were to really give just a little bit of wisdom to our listeners about listening in a, I guess, more compassionate way and more open way, what have you learned are sort of the essential skills or takeaways from listening?
I teach the core, and I just use another acronym because I think it really helps, right? So the C stands for calm. You have to start, when you're listening, you have to start from a place of calm. And everybody thinks listening starts with the other person, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It starts with you. And if you're not calm, you're not going to be able to hear somebody else. So that's the first thing. The second is outcome. What do you want to get from this conversation? And asking that question before you start listening, so you know what the other person is hoping for. Do they just want to vent? Are they looking for someone to suggest a path for them? Are they stuck? Helping to know, somebody says, well, what are we going to have for dinner? That's easy to know. What's the outcome of that conversation, right? We're gonna figure out where we're gonna go for dinner. But something deeper, to really find out, what are you hoping for? Do you just need me to hear you? That's powerful. The R is to relate, right? We really have to stay in there and really not be distracted with the phone, on all those like normal, simple things that are key to listening. Be present, make that eye contact, those things. And then E, empathize, right? Just, even if it's just, oh my God, that sucks. And just let that be enough. I mean, sometimes that's all somebody needs, but it's so powerful.
Yes. And wow, like, what a great simple way to teach listening skills. I love acronyms,
because I feel like that acronym is like so crucial in active listening, but it's like there's plenty of therapy models that uses different acronyms, but it's like just because you know the acronym doesn't mean that you are going to automatically know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, because for us as a species, I feel like if you're to take this as a metaphor, like our core strength in terms of like, it's like it's those muscles have atrophied for us. And so it's like trying to build that back up. We're not going to be perfect at any of those things right off the bat. Like, we're going to struggle trying to relearn and rebuild the strength of doing those different communication skills and active listening skills, for sure. I know that there's a lot of places that I've been hearing people talk about the outcome aspect of like, do you want it to just be venting and I'll hear you?
I have a game I do with clients called Vent Share Advice. I'm like, Vent Share Advice.
Oh yeah.
Vent Share Advice.
I think that, but that's the thing, is like, we as humans think that being helpful is the advice aspect. We haven't been taught that sitting and listening with empathy is the helpful part. Like, we haven't been taught that.
Right. And I think part of the reason, I think you're exactly right. I think part of the reason for that is that we don't know how to stay in our emotional center. So somebody starts to share, right? And then it goes right back to that C. It's the core. So you have to stay in that. You have to practice that. You have to practice all of that. And so as soon as somebody gets drawn off their center, they're more likely to offer advice. If they can't stay with someone who's crying, or if they can't stay with somebody who's really, really angry, right? Because it can be hard. It can be hard if somebody's mad at you and they're throwing stuff. It can be really hard to stay there. But when you understand that this person can have their truth and I can have mine, that is super powerful. There is so much power in that.
Yeah. And we can hold space for other people's truth without, like, it doesn't have to undermine ours. It doesn't have to negate ours. And I think that that's where there's so many directions to go with
the duality of everything is like, we're so black and white. Like, I'm just gonna continue to lump the whole human race into this, but just like the black and white thinking, like I remember going to a therapy session at one point and being like, I can't be both sad about this and grateful about this at the same time. Like, I can't, I'm just not allowed to. And they're like, what? And the therapist was like, well, why not? You can be both and I'm like,
what?
Like, how is that? And so not only do we feel like two things can't exist at the same time in terms of two or more people's perspectives or like how
their preferences,
their
whatever.
Yeah, like how they look at life versus just how many emotions can exist at once. And it's amazing how it's like looking at the network of emotions that can exist in one person from one event is just so fascinating as a therapist to like hear, like, list out all the emotions that you're hearing, like that you feel, and like don't leave anything out, even if it doesn't make sense. Like,
yeah, it's like easily from any one given situation, there's like 7 emotions coming up. I wanted to leap back to your comment about sort of the core skill atrophy, the atrophy process that is happening in our culture, because I feel like we've gotten away from this skill of listening into a doing mode. And that has to do, you know where I'm going with this.
Oh boy.
Our patriarchal system that has existed for like 5,000 years now, basically.
Yeah.
And we went from sort of these communities into individual thinking and separating. And so with that sort of more masculine lens too, it's the problem solving, right? Fix it instead of
immediate gratification.
Well, and I mean, our technology, it's hard to listen when our attention span is so short now.
Yeah. Like with TikTok, it's like, if you don't hold my attention for the first 5 seconds of your 3-minute TikTok, I'm not listening.
So what's your experience with that, Deb, in terms of like when you are training someone, or even if you're just like listening to someone and their experience of actually being heard versus sort of this like larger societal picture? What's your perspective there?
Yeah, I think that people experience our listeners as amazing. That's the word that keeps coming back, and I think part of the reason that word comes back is because we're compassionate, but beyond that, because really being heard dials into something that people haven't experienced because people don't know how to give it necessarily. So we're taught as kids, sit down, be quiet, and listen. And if we were lucky, we heard be quiet and not shut up. you know, but it's not taught. We're not teaching it. I mean, certainly I wasn't ever taught. Were you taught in any way, shape, or form how to? Were you ever even if you think about psychology and as you went through your coursework there, were you taught these are the things that you do to listen?
When I
For
learned
psychology.
nonviolent communication was where I finally learned about listening skills, because there's nonviolent listening.
Which is so funny that it's like it's either listening or nonviolently listening. Like,
right?
like that's scary. Like we have to have a nonviolent option because every other form of listening is going to be violent.
Sometimes that listening, is that listening to respond.
Yeah.
That a lot of us fall into because of the way we've been trained to kind of, instead of put the community, the collective at the forefront, we're putting the individual at the forefront, and we've learned to take everything so personally. Like, I don't know anyone, myself included at this stage, that doesn't struggle with taking things personally.
But then also we would be critical of ourselves for taking things personally because we've had people in our lives be like, you're too much, you're too sensitive, you're too emotional. So it's like when we do have hit those walls of experiencing emotions personally, because those are valid emotions to have, like those feelings of also being unheard from those past experiences of being told that we're too much, we will also self-criticize and shove those down even further, which is just causing even more pain within our system.
Yeah.
So
I think the nonviolent communication, that the particular book, Nonviolent Communication, I think that's how come it got labeled like that, is because that book was so monumental in terms of starting to find a really a language that's easily understood and grasped by the masses, right? It's written at a very down to earth level that anybody can read that and understand what they're saying. And also, in terms of feelings and what are you feeling, I wanted to mention too, on the Center for Nonviolent Communication, they have a feeling word list that if you haven't used with your clients, I love that list. I think it's so powerful. I actually have a printout of it that I keep, because for a long time it took me a while to figure out, okay, if you can't name it, if you don't know what it is, I mean, if it's just kind of floating around and you don't know what to call it, it gets harder to work. You can't work with it. You got to be able to name it. And so that having a word list for me really helped, because I could start going, oh, okay, well, maybe this. And even better, the Center for Nonviolent Communication, they have it broken down into feelings where your needs are satisfied and not satisfied, and then it's got headings, so you can go, okay, angry. I get I'm angry, but then you start going down and really breaking that down even more, and you're like, oh, okay, now maybe we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, that's and the cool thing is, so I work with mostly neurodivergent kids, and that's one of the biggest things we first start talking to, because like the parents will be like, I don't know what they're feeling, I don't know how to, and the thing with parenting is that like most of us haven't been parented to be emotionally communicative, like to and so it's like they're like, my kid is crying but I don't know what they need, and I'm like, well, they don't have the language to tell you yet. Like we have to show them, like, what words do you want to use to express these feelings, these emotions, what are how do you recognize your needs, what are the how do you advocate for them once you start to recognize them, that sort of thing. And it's like that's been some of like the most amazing work to have with the parents is just be like,
Oh, yeah.
and to witness kids now who are
Right.
able to advocate for themselves. Like I'll just witness a 5-year-old be like, I feel this and I need that. And I'm like, yes.
I got chills. I got chills again. I love it so much. That brought me chills. That's beautiful.
And
That's,
that made me think of, I was just talking to a client that I work with who's a parent, and this couple has been really working on their communication with their kids, and they will hear this teen like talking to her friends and using the emotional words that her parents are using, because the parents are doing the work of listening
Yep.
to their own inner needs and then reflecting it in language so that the
Well,
kids can express.
Well, that's the beautiful thing too, is like I'll often have like parent sessions and child sessions. And so like the parent, like during the parent session, it'll be a lot of similar things of like exploring their feelings. And if they realize they don't know, like they don't have
Right.
like they don't know how to communicate their feelings with me, like I can
Yep.
be like, well, you can see how hard it is for your kid. Like, and it's like, it's nothing against you as their parent. It's like, let's go through this learning
Exactly.
experience together. And
You
there's also,
can't teach what you don't know. Exactly. Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
there's also this beautiful thing that with neurodivergent kids, sometimes even language in general is really hard to associate with what they're feeling in their bodies. And there's like a group of um, autistic educators that created this like app that instead of it being actual like anger, sad, whatever, they have different like essentially onomatopoeia to explain what they're feeling. And so it's like it has the word, it has like a picture of like this, like if I feel like zap today, or I feel like um you know pow, yeah. And some of those, and then some of them feels like I feel like sandy, or I feel like there's one that's no picture. And it's, which is very interesting because it's like
Wow.
there's some kids that will like completely and utterly be like, this is it, this is what it feels like, I don't have a word for it other than this. And it's like
Mm.
to also be heard
Yeah.
through another language to
Yeah.
explain how they're feeling is such a great way to connect with them too.
That's
I love all
beautiful.
the different resources that more people are coming up with.
I wonder if that will maybe inspire a digital chapter of Hold down the line, where there is some kind of way to listen through through emojis.
We actually have an idea and a concept for using VR chat. We think that we can't work with kids, unfortunately, even though I would love to.
Right.
My lawyer just said that's way too risky without actually being licensed.
Right.
You just can't. And so I said, okay, I respect that. I believe that I can have an impact with adults to their kids, because it's exactly what you're saying. When you teach the adults how and what they're feeling, if you can help them get to know where they're at, they will automatically help their kids.
Yep.
That's how it works. And so I'm okay working with the adults, because I believe in the, unlike economics, trickle down in this sense does work.
Yes.
Yes, yes, it does. When we model it, they learn. And
Yep.
so yes, the VR chat would be really, really fun. We haven't been able to figure out exactly how to do that yet, but I hope maybe someday we will. I think that's part of the reason. If somebody goes to our website, Hearing Out Life Drama, they'll see that we have phone chat and Zoom, and we hope that we'll be able to add that VR chat option, because it's just another way of giving people, some people want that face-to-face interaction. Some people want to step back a little bit, want to be able to hear. Some people want that text chat. I don't want to. You don't need to know me, right? But I need to say this. But I need to say this. And so I think that the VR chat will be another avenue, if we can figure out how to make it happen, that can also be really valuable. That might also, I think that some people, VR is going to be more and more popular, I think, as life goes on.
Probably. I mean, it'll be a great way to use for like play therapy options. Like it's just so like with the closest thing to VR that I work with kids on is Minecraft, and they often like it's like a world that you
Yes.
can exist and do just the same sort of stuff that humans will do with each other, and work on social skills and how you can play together. And like that's what VR could totally do as well, just almost like more realistic, I guess. So that would be really cool.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, if you don't mind, like moments where you've seen that authenticity. You know, you mentioned like you wanted to be authentic in yourself and your ability to interface with your family. So, you know, you made some really hard life choices to be able to get to that point. But what have you seen it bring out in people that you've worked with in terms of them being able to step into their authenticity through being heard?
It's a little bit different for me because I don't get the follow through that you might in therapy. So I literally talk to somebody and then just in terms of hold, if I'm just talking about that, I mean, we can talk about it in terms of my life or and other things, but just since I've had hold, we interact with people and then they go. So the impact isn't ever really fully known, right? I don't see them again. I don't talk to them again necessarily. They might call. We haven't had anybody call back yet, and I think people will eventually. It's simply we're still new enough that we haven't. We do have a rule that we don't take anyone more than 6 times per rolling calendar year. And the reason for that is therapeutic alliance forms around that 6th time. And we aren't therapy. We're not that. And if somebody needs that, if they've needed us 6 times, then that's kind of their cue that, hey, maybe, you know, we can help them start to move towards that. So we have a way so we can monitor as people have more than one appointment. So there's a box to check, you know, is this your first time with us? And if not, then check the box. And then we have a process of going through and finding out, okay, is this person, how many times have they talked to a listener? And so, but the authenticity, I can't, it's really hard to answer that question because I don't know the impact. But what I believe the impact is ripples. I believe that when you give it to somebody, it can't help but to be ripples in a pond and to come out. It's the only way it can happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, you said it earlier in terms of the fact that, you know, you can work with adults that can then have the ripple effect to their kids.
Yeah.
And it's like you are modeling that listening behavior. You are modeling that core aspect, which is, you know, that's the big, you're the rock thrown into that pond to start that ripple effect. And so that's like, you know, that's amazing to be able to do that.
And I imagine that people really engaging with hold the way that you're intending it to, like, it opens up a huge door for authenticity because they're really being given an opportunity to just be heard out, not to have to problem solve or fix if that's not what the conversation is about, and to just be received as they are,
and to be and to know that that sort of reality can exist for them. I think that's the biggest thing is like we have, if you experience something so much in your life in terms of feeling unheard or being not seen, you just start to accept that that's going to be your reality forever. And the aspect of being seen or heard is just not in the books for you. So offering people that space to where they can be seen and heard gives them that glimmer of hope of like, oh, this isn't asking for too much. Like I deserve this. I am worthy of having these spaces, and, you know, to ask for people in my life to provide me with that sort of space and compassionate listening and create communities around me that offer those sorts of interactions. So,
yeah.
Who would you say, because you mentioned like if they have more than 6 sessions, you're going to begin the sort of the referral out process of, okay, it's time to get an elevated form of care. Who would you say hold is the best fit for?
I think we're a great fit for somebody who's not sure if they want to make the time, effort, and an investment in therapy. If they're scared of therapy, if they don't know what it's like to talk to a stranger, and they're just like, yeah, I don't know if I could do this, because that can be a question for people, right? I think too, we're great for somebody who has just not something that's ongoing necessarily, just because if you've got an ongoing problem, you're going to have to sort out why that ongoing problem is there. But for somebody who's had just a really intense issue that's kind of out of the ordinary for them, that they don't quite know where to go with, or what to do with it, and maybe they tried a friend or a family member and it didn't go well, which happens. I
All the
think we're yeah, I think we're a great option for those people,
Yeah,
and
that
I
makes
really
sense.
do.
Yeah.
And it might even be a really good fit for like people who have engaged in therapy and like have graduated from therapy,
Yes.
and they're like
Yes.
not maintaining an ongoing therapeutic
Yes.
alliance because they basically just need somebody to vent to occasionally and have space
Yes.
filled because they
Perfect.
already have the skills, and sometimes it's
Right.
literally just knowing that someone else is energetically holding space for
Yeah.
you, and that
Perfect.
process of verbalizing, like you're able to kind of sort things out. So it's
Yeah.
I could really see it being something that, therapists kind of refer, hey, if you need support in the future, like
Mhm.
this is the type of service you could get if you're not looking for
support
therapy.
that's not emergency services.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm just feeling so stressed because my kids did this, and
Right.
my mom's going through a crisis, and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just
It's the
stressed.
it's the pile up, right? Because that's what gets people is when there's the pile up and it's just all of a sudden all of this stuff, and then what? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Sometimes they just need someone to hear them
Yeah.
and ask even the question of like, well, what skills have helped you in the past, like get through times like this even, and just jog their memory of
Yeah.
like, oh, your resilience.
Or even just the question of what do you need right now to help yourself feel better?
Yeah.
Even that is so powerful, I think. And I think that offering that in a compassionate, caring way can really help somebody from where they're at to be in a new space.
Oh, I just am getting like emotional over just, the population of people who don't realize that that's an option, in terms of knowing that there are people out there that will ask that question of
Mm.
what
Mhm.
is it that you specifically, not here's a prescriptive, like, here's what statistically people in your shoes, this is what has helped them. No, what is going to help you specifically? What are your needs right now? Which is like such a thing that people don't realize, like they can explore that, and it
Mhm.
doesn't have to equal what has been prescribed to people.
Right.
So
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you guys hear my dog? I'm sorry.
it's all good.
It's cute. All of our animals are like, all right, you've been doing the thing long enough.
Yep.
So, is there anything else that you would want to share with our listeners, Deb? So, we're gonna have your link for holds right in the description on the video and in the audio podcast. So, please go check Deb's website out. It's really cute. Um, and you've got some great like staff profiles on there, where people can kind of get to know you and your staff, the listeners. But is there anything else that you can think that you would want to share today?
Oh, if people are going to go check out my listeners, I did take that down recently. The videos were making the website load slow. So we took
No.
I did. I'm sorry. So sorry
Oh,
for your listeners. Those aren't there anymore. We tried to make the website faster so you'd stay. So we had our 6 seconds.
I think our website was having some issues like that too.
Yeah, I'm not a web designer. I'm a listener, and so that part of the business has been really challenging for me, and has, I'm trying to level up, but I kind of feel like I'm, Donkey Kong, and the barrels keep coming at me. I have to say. Anyway,
Yeah, you're gonna figure it out. It's
I
gonna
will.
happen.
You asked me a question about hold and what else I wanted people to know. I think what I would hope people would know is, even if I'm not your listener, the people that I'm training are going to be able to hold you just as well. Whether it's me, whether it's Sarah, we're bringing Claire on board, I hope, really soon, and she's in training right now. Everybody is LGBTQ plus. That is a requirement, and that is part of the job interview, because it's so core to what I believe. The faith part, people might wonder, well, is it, because we started out the conversation right with the ministerial piece. I trust that wherever people are in their spiritual journey is where they're at. We are not a faith-based organization. We're not pushing faith at anybody, even though that's my background and that's how I learned the skills that I have, and that's where I started from. That's not what we're gonna. None of our listeners are gonna be pushing anything. We're here to listen to you. That's it. That's really it. We're here to hear you and to offer you the compassion you need to figure out what's next, so you can process whatever it is that's spinning. And it can even be a good thing. We had one person that was pregnant, and that was unexpected, and she's happy, and yet, like, oh my. So figuring that out, so whether, regardless, maybe it's a new job, maybe it's so hard to know how to market, I think, because people are so unique and individual, and is my service for everybody? Well, honestly, everybody does need to be heard. Yeah. Yeah, it kind of is. That doesn't make my business coach very happy with me, or my marketing mentor either, for that matter, but there we are. So yeah.
Well, we need to figure out how to network you with the therapy community that has people that are being discharged, that because I always write up a little recommendation for my clients okay, we're terminating therapy. There are not plans to return to therapy, but if you need to, here's what you do. But then if you are just looking to kind of maintain yourself, here's some supports, some book recommendations, some this and that. And I do feel like something like Hold would be, and I mean, this is entirely unique. Like what you've created is so unique. I'm not seeing this opportunity really out there, but like, this is the opportunity for people who just might need that 15-minute sort of tune up of, I just need that knowledge that if I really need someone to listen to me and I need that neutral party, but I don't want to go through the process of getting insurance and a diagnosis and blah, blah, for like 15 to 30 minutes of just being heard and problem solving in my own head through verbalizing and being held. Like I think we might be able to help you out there, hopefully, in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. And for those people that come to Hold who hit that mark of, oh my, maybe I do need some more help, we're happy to refer your way too. And so, yeah, absolutely, 100%. I think making sure that we have the mental health resources available to people wherever they're at is so important.
Meet people where they're at. Sometimes people need therapy. Sometimes they just need a confidant. Sometimes they need just an access to a resource list.
Yep, exactly.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm always delighted to talk to you, at least since we're pen pals and all.
I need to become a pen pal now. Like, this is amazing.
I'd love that. You're welcome to anytime. Thank you. You guys are both incredible. And I'm so excited about the work you're doing. I love your podcast. And I think that there's so much good going into the world as a result.
Well, thank you. We believe in your mission too, and that's what we are all about.
Yeah, so, uplifting everyone.
Uplifting the others.
Yeah.
All